dog people of the internet. Karishma here from Calm Canine Academy, and we're going to be talking in today's live about fear, reactivity in our pet dogs, and we have a very special guest today. I'm very excited. I'm going to quickly just invite her to join us so that she knows how to get in, and her name is Grace Cook, Doctor. Associate Consultant at CCA. She is a dog trainer, behavior consultant, and also a veterinarian. And here she is now, so we're going to say hi.
Just turn my camera around.
Hi. Nice. Hi. Oh, it looks like my headphones are working now. Can you hear me, Grace?
I can hear you. Is this sounding okay?
Yeah, can everyone who's in the chat hear us? Let us know. I've been having some tech issues today, so apologies. Hello, Dr. Amy Cook is here. Very exciting. Nerding out a little bit. Nice to see you, Dr. Cook. Hey, two Dr. Cooks. How cool. Two Dr. Cooks in the room. That's so cool. So everyone who hasn't met Grace, this is Grace. Yeah, Grace is wonderful. Recently joined our team as a behavior consultant. Thank you for the audio check. You had the cooks. And we're going to be chatting today about fear, about reactivity, and just generally, I actually have never really fully heard your origin story from the beginning. So I'm kind of excited to just like chat about what brought us here and why we like working with these dogs and how we work with these dogs a little bit. So let's start us off. Grace, what brought you here as a dog trainer slash behavior consultant slash veterinarian at this point? Tell us a little bit about the story.
I have like the classic starting of everybody who wants to be a vet when they're like 4 years old, like I want to grow up and fix animals. So all of my life was like dedicated to animals. I kept bringing pets home. We always just ended up with like everybody's spare dogs that they couldn't have anymore. They always came home. And then I started horse riding. I also started watching dog training on TV a lot and writing. I have copious amount of notes from them. I was like proper nerding out at like 12 years old.
That's so cute.
I know it was embarrassing. Did I learn a lot of good stuff? No, but I tried. Tried. And then I weirdly found myself in construction as a normal turn of events and volunteering for a dog charity who did pound pulling. So all the dogs from the pound that didn't get rescue spaces came to us essentially, which meant we were kind of left with a lot of bull breeds. Dogs to dog reactivity was huge. Most of our dogs had dog to dog reactivity or other behavioral issues. And a lot of them tended to be just adolescents with a lot of that excitable energy that was just uncontrollable essentially. Then through them, I adopted my little dog. I always wanted a big bull breed, like a Mastiff, and I ended up with a 2-kilo Jack Russell, who is my angel. Yeah, the small breeds just won us over. And yeah, her like behavioral and medical things just kind of made me think, yeah, actually, I think I could be a vet. So I went back to college and then went into vet school. And then through vet school, I originally wanted to do neurology, but then the more I was working with dogs and trying to like earn money alongside it, the more I kind of fell in love with behavior and just did more and more courses that I could do basically. So yeah, that's how it's all happened, and just try to follow as many people as possible.
You're a big old nerd. And that's how we met each other, isn't it? It's just through like internet vibes, kind of being in the same super nerdy dog crew who all have super sensitive dogs. And you not only have your own sensitive dog right now, or multiple, but I'm especially interested in Crash because he reminds me of Hera so much. I want to hear a little bit about Crash. And I also just want to hear a little bit more. I want everyone to know a little bit about your foster work, because when it comes to dog training, you need to put in your 10,000 hours on the street working with dogs, right? So for myself, I started 8 years ago working in New York. So I was on the streets 12 hours a day, you know, doing long work shifts, working with hundreds of different dogs on like dozens of different challenges. And I always think about your foster dogs whenever I think about like a good experience of working with different dogs. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Crash. And I also want to hear about all the other way around. And I want to hear about the fosters as well, because it's like insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, I eventually got kicked out of my house for this. Essentially, it's just bringing all the fosters home. But we've had about 30 over the time. We originally adopted a staffy called Bane, who is an angel. And we had him with our Springer Spaniel, so I'd always had gun dogs. He was like a massive shock to the system. The dog scared of fireworks, like that was wild. Because all of our dogs were gun dogs, so they weren't reactive at all. And then through Bain, we then started fostering dogs. We had loads of staffies, or we had like a Dutchy mix, so shepherds. We did have a couple of Shih Tzus, and a Chihuahua, but we've kind of like mainly had the bull breeds. And with them, I also then kind of fell into dog sitting and dog walking because everybody was like, oh, Grace, she works with rescue dogs that are all difficult. Like, maybe you can come and stay at my house and look after my dogs. So that's kind of like how I fell into that. So I was like, I think I spent a whole summer essentially not having a home, just living in everybody else's house, where I was just going literally from house to house to house. I was packed out for about 7 months of just dog sitting every single day of so many different dogs, predominantly strange danger, or dog aggressive, or dog reactive, anything with a little bit of behavioural issues, basically. So I got a lot of hands-on experience with them. And then when I came to vet school, my exposure to dogs was kind of reduced, but I still did dog walking. So still had, I did one-to-one dog walking. So because I lived in Camden, I walked around, took everyone's dog who had issues, everything that was a little bit spicy, and did the walk, like kind of like walking trains with them. And then I decided that actually I think I can have my own dog now. So I had Midgie, who's my 2 kilo Jack Russell, but she was more of a guinea pig than a dog. She just kind of like followed me around and she was just like a little angel. So I went to the rescue. I was like, I really want a border collie or a Malinois, something that I can do sports with. And they were like, here's a Jackapoo. And I was like, oh, it's not what I was looking for. And he came out, and I'm not joking, he was the ugliest dog I've ever seen in my life. He was like hair coming from everywhere. He was scratty, he was scrawny. All he did was jump on us, bite us, and hump us. And he just kept trying to pull Midgie out of my arms. And I was like, oh, she's queen. Like, you're going to have to get used to that. But yeah, the guy at the end of it, because we had it all recorded, the camera guy was like, I'm so sorry, what are you going to do? You're going to ask for another dog? And I was like, no, I'll take him. Like, he's my dog.
Absolutely.
And then he came and like did the 2 month review. And Crash was like led on my bed. He'd had a shave. He'd looked a lot prettier. And the guy was like, oh, so where did you get this dog from? Like, and I was like, it's the same dog. Like, he's just, had a bit of work. He was just a bit decompressed. And yeah, he just couldn't believe that it was the same dog. So that was quite funny. But yeah, he's a great dog. He's a now 5-year-old poodle mix with Parson and Springer Spaniel, which is an eclectic mix.
Super spicy.
He's 12 kilos, but we do so many sports together. He's like my little angel, but he does have, especially like dog related aggression through resource guarding and to uncastrated males. Like, he hates an entire male. Basically, any dog with balls is a no. Like, whether that's a ball in their mouth or a ball anywhere else, like we're not friends. So
say no to balls.
Yeah.
We've got some Crash fans in the comments here saying that Crash is the best. Yeah. We love Crash. Crash is like Hera in a slightly alternate timeline.
Yeah.
Like, very
They are so similar.
He looks similar. Sometimes I see pictures of Crash and I'm like, oh, who took that picture of Hera? Because it's Crash. It's really weird. And they have like even got similar, like their fizziness, like how quickly they can go from 0 to 100. There's a lot of like of similarities. I think they're so cute. And one thing that stands out to me there is like, one thing about you, I'm going to just put you on blast with everybody. One thing about Grace is that you're kind of constantly under representing what you're doing. So like you were saying, I was just like I was a dog walker for a while and just like walking dogs around the neighborhood. And I'm like, babe, I legit know you're doing full-blown behavior therapy plans with each of those dogs. Like, you're not getting it past anyone. Like, Grace is definitely not doing just dog walking ever. Like, it was always behavior therapy. I've lost Grace. Have you guys lost her for a moment as well? She'll come back in a minute. But I don't know if you guys know this about the dog training industry. There you are. I didn't know if you missed, but I was telling you off for underselling your skills, because you were absolutely like, I bet every single one of your clients, your dog walking clients, had a behavior workups. They had a plan. They had you were not doing dog walking, just so that everybody knows. You were doing extremely
Yeah.
affordable behavior therapy. Exactly. So yeah, just very quickly gonna just had to do my own little quick prompt there, that was not dog walking. You were doing it, and that's kind of what brought me to you as well, because I could see there's a lot of people can talk a big talk in this industry, but it's actually about, just like anything else, putting in that hard work, case by case by case by case. And you've definitely done that. It's very cool to see. And Crash is looking brilliant. Like, I think you've been working primarily with lots of dogs who come from like a neglectful upbringing. You were working
Yeah.
on like just settling him, getting his nervous system
Mm-hmm.
relaxed, getting him able to kind of relax and settle. And you're doing all of this while going through vet school, which is honestly the reality of lots of our clients. You know, they have a whole life alongside their dogs, and that's what the benefit of having really experienced practitioners like yourself as a coach, or myself as a coach, um,
Mm-hmm.
is that we know what it feels like to be like, have to get up at 5 a.m. to do the thing, to then go to school for 6 hours or 10 hours and then come, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's different. And so I don't know, it's very cool what you've been doing, and I'm very excited, and we're very thrilled to have you um, on the team. I want to talk a little bit more about fear and reactivity, because that's kind of like, both of us, we love fear and
Yeah.
reactivity is like our bread and butter. At CCA in general, our consultants are all experts in the big feelings, fear and reactivity, fear being one of the most potent big feelings. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what that looks like for lots of our clients that we work with, and then we can talk about how we resolve and work with fear. So if anyone's wanting to know, like, how does you fix it, that's coming. We just got to define it real quick first, because that's, I think, the first thing that we'll do when we're working. So if anyone's thinking like, how do I work with Grace, a dog behavior consultant and a vet? Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Yeah, it is amazing. Grace works privately, coaching. So everything that we do at CCA is virtual. If you're like, how does virtual dog training work? Just go look at our Google reviews. We have close to 100, brilliant Google reviews that show that this stuff works. And when you first join a program, we start off identifying what is going on with your dog. That's what happens in an initial consultation, isn't it? So Grace will
Mm-hmm.
spend almost 2 hours in an initial consultation, reviewing the case, learning all the details, and then giving an assessment. All of our trainers do this, an assessment of what's going on, so that you understand. Let's talk a little bit about fear in dogs, Grace. What are the first things that come to mind for you when you think about your clients and fear and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to nerd out a little bit, obviously. Um, there was a study done, I can't remember what year it was in, but showing that when people were shown videos of dogs and their behavior, like 93% of people could identify that the dogs were happy, but only 30% of people could see fear in the dogs, and that only rose to 70% of dog professionals. And I think that's like really quite telling, that we can see happiness in our dogs, but we really struggle to see the fear. And there was another study done in 2020 that showed, like, I think it was 32% of dogs in the study, which was like 14,000 dogs, showed fear. So if you think that, if that was reflective of dogs in the world, I mean, there's about 900 million pet dogs, I think, in the world, and 30% of them showing fear is like 300 million dogs. So it is a huge problem. Like, it's not something that maybe, one dog down the street will have. It's an epidemic. And fear is often shown through so many different ways. It's the normal one that we think of is the running away, hiding, tail tucked, but it's so often not represented like that in dogs, because essentially that doesn't work for a lot of our dogs, because they're captive. They can't run away from their problems when they're on a lead. They can't run away from their problems when they're shut in a crate or locked in a room, because there's nowhere for them to go. So outside of flight, they've got minimal other options. One of the options is fight. So we see our dogs showing repulsion based behaviors. So barking, lunging, growling, trying to basically get the threat to go away in some shape or form. And this is the one that I think most people reach out for help with because it's the most difficult for them to deal with, and it's the most embarrassing as well when you're walking your dog, and especially if you've got a little dog and it's like yapping at everyone and everyone's like, oh, it's little dog syndrome. Or if you've got a big dog, it's unmanageable and unsafe. So we tend to see a lot of people come with those repulsion based behaviors. But the ones that unfortunately are forgotten about are the ones that use like freeze or appease. So the dogs that are really shut down, who really just really struggle to express themselves because they've learned helplessness. Nothing helps them. They just have to deal with their life, which is actually super sad. And we see this a lot in rescue dogs, like the dogs that will seem really placid and lovely, then go to a home, and then after 3 months, their bad behaviors come out. And it is essentially just that they're getting past that learned helplessness.
Yes.
So I've seen that a lot with our foster dogs, especially, but when they're going to their new homes or things after that. And then the other one is the appeasement, which we again don't see that many people coming to ask for help for because it's such a cute thing. Like they'll lie on their back, they'll have that really stiff body language, their tummy up, their tail tucked, often wet themselves, but it's cute. So people don't see that so much as a problem. Whereas actually all of these four like representations are still just as fearful as each other. They're just learning about what works for them. So yeah, I think that answered the question. I can't remember what the question
No,
was.
that was a brilliant question. We were just talking about how fear looks, and you've outlined the fight, flight, freeze, and appease or fawn, different kind of ways that it could look. And you're totally right. Most folks come to us when it's big and scary and
Mm-hmm.
a big problem. Usually that means
Yeah.
noise or pulling or yeah, barky, lungy, snappy, bitey behaviors. But it comes in many different forms. You know, we see the freezing, the going inwards. You mentioned that learned helplessness where they kind of don't do much, they kind of give up.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that you're saying so true that all four presentations can be equally unpleasant, equally detrimental to the animal. So objectively, we need to be treating them all with the same severity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard for folks to see this, I think, because, well, I guess the because question is a big question, but I often say to folks that humans are desensitized to the suffering of the captive animals that we live with. If you're used to seeing dogs kind of barking and lunging at things on walks, that's just a normal dog behavior to you. But and if you'd asked me when I was younger, I would have been like, yeah, it's normal for dogs to bark and bite and do these things. Even this little Shih Tzu was barking and lunging and chasing squirrels and birds in the yard. And when I addressed my parents that we needed to fix this or change this, they were like, well, dogs chase animals. It's totally fine. And in many cases, yes, but not when it's like 30 times a day and he's not sleeping.
Exactly.
But in their
Yeah.
head, they were like, he's just a dog. That's what dogs do. So that's a big part of why I love Instagram and free shit like this, because it's how
Mm-hmm.
we change the public narrative. It's a way to change the public narrative and to give people more information because people want that information. It's really funny that you mentioned like not many people come in for the freeze or appease, freeze or
Mm-hmm.
fawn presentations. And it's actually made me think that in the last 2 years, I think, which the last year or so, since our Instagram has gotten really big, I've probably for the first time had clients coming to me and being like, he's jumping and licking the guardian, but I don't think that he's feeling good. I think he's appeasing them or something like that. It's the first time I've ever heard people. So bringing these conversations up, I think, is important because it puts it in everyone's minds. It puts it on people's lips. We start talking about it more. And then people can start to identify. But that statistic is quite 70% of professionals. I mean, I wish I was surprised. I'm not surprised, but it shows us how important it is to have
Yeah.
these sorts of conversations with each other in a public place. Yeah. So yeah, that was a brilliant rundown, I think. And actually, tell me how fear showed up for Crash. I'm curious.
Fear of crash has always been hyperarousal. So this kind of like fawning slash appeasement behaviors. His was primarily humping. Like, God, that boy was humpy. The bruises on my leg were wild. He did a lot of humping, having to control the situation. So like he was non-aggressive with dogs, but he would chase them down and make sure that they were not displaying these too much of a excitement behavior. Like everything had to be chill and on his terms. Um, However, like with people, he did, well, with men especially, he did the classic, like go onto the floor, crawl away. He even used to wet himself whenever my brother would walk in the room. Um, and then with entire males, he's massively repulsive. Lots of shouting, pinning, like he would pin a dog, bite them, like
Explain to
mouth their neck,
people what
that kind of
repulsive means, just for
thing.
us
Sorry.
bimbos.
Repulsion is the idea of making something go away. So that can be essentially just, I can't even think of how to describe that. Just, yeah, repulsion is in like go
That's
away.
it. That's
So,
exactly what it is. I think I actually even wanted to make sure that I was thinking the right thing as well. I think that he has the motivation to increase the
yeah,
distance. He wants them gone, or he wants them under control in a way
neutralize.
that
Yeah.
neutralized. That's a good phrase. Here is so similar. In certain
Mm-hmm.
contexts, he would show these sorts of agonistic behaviors. I'm going to proactively seek out dogs, proactively
Mm-hmm.
seek out people, and posture. So
Yeah.
lots of growling, barking, physically putting them in a corner. And then for Hira, if he was pushed past that point, he would also do like biting and snapping behaviors and all sorts of other stuff. And it's just, I always want to hear about folks' individual experience with these things, because it makes a big difference. And it sounds like, just like with Hira, Crash had like widespread fear in different ways that came up in different ways for different triggers. And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
so frequently, that's how
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing this play out with our clients' dogs as well. So at the beginning, often our jobs, I think, is to just like figure out what is actually going on, because so frequently guardians will come to me and be like,
Yeah.
they're scared of everything, and we have to be like, okay, let's break this down. And I guess that leads us into like the kind of mistakes that we see people making, and the things that we have to adjust when we first step in. So I was wondering about, like, with your clients, what are the things that you're most frequently helping them avoid, and pitfalls that you're going to help them avoid? Because I don't know about you, but I made all the mistakes with Hira, literally almost every single one, except for separation anxiety stuff, because he didn't care about that. So I want to hear from you, like, what are the things that you're looking immediately to like step in and help your clients avoid?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that people do is overwhelm their dogs. So we need to like go in first and just manage the situation so that they have time for their cortisol levels to reset. Because cortisol is a stress hormone, and that can take 24 to 72 hours to reduce. So if they're seeing a threat every twice a day, 3 times a day, they're never going to have a calm enough state to actually do some training, and actually learn that things aren't as threatening as what they assume. I think another one is that they don't people don't really understand the difference between having a annual health check at the vet and having a full in-depth health check, because we see so often that dogs with behavioral problems have underlying pain or discomfort. I mean, there was the paper by Mills, there was papers by Malakani, there's been papers by Goldberg. Like everybody has shown that we see behavioral issues with pain so interlinked. And unfortunately, the way that the veterinary system is set up in the UK, at least, because that's all I've got experience with, is that we have these 15-minute appointments where we have to focus on what the guardian comes in for. If they come
Mm-hmm.
in for a vaccine, I don't have time to be like, what's your nutrition like? What's your gait analysis? How's their defecating? Like, unless there's an emergency, we have to focus on what they're dealing with. So even when people say, oh yeah, they've been to the vet and they said they were fine, is that a big enough representation of what we're looking at for pain? Absolutely not. So I think one of the other pitfalls is definitely that there is an underlying medical condition that we
Mm-hmm.
haven't looked at. So yeah, I think that the management and the underlying health is definitely the first port of call, and the things that we find that are wrong with our dogs first, I would
Yeah,
say.
I would absolutely totally agree with you. And it's so nice, literally, for me, having a vet, literally just earlier today, I was messaging Grace. I'm so annoying. I'm messaging Grace. Is this normal for this? Da, 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 all these questions, because it's really hard.
Yeah.
Um, it's really hard if the teams don't talk to each other, and if we don't
Mm-hmm.
have like the support that we need, or if the guardians don't know how to get the support that they need. And that's where we come in, I think. Obviously, even I think like working virtually with someone, you might not even want to be giving any actual medical advice ever, because that's not how medicine works. But what we can do is help guardians figure out the way through the noise and the mess. There's so many options, and I literally just did 3 classes today, and in every single class, at least one of the clients, we were just figuring out which practitioner to go and see. That sometimes you need help figuring out, should we see the musculoskeletal specialist, should we see the dietitian specialist, should we see etc etc. And I think so frequently I find guardians come to me being like, I had a suspicion that this might be something going on, but I did the general checkup and it was fine. And so I love having like practitioners like yourself out there, like doctors out there saying, you need to give your vet team a chance also to do the full workup within the appropriate scenarios. And if for whatever reason that's not happening, we get a second opinion, we look somewhere else. And just like any medicine, you might not find the first practitioner that you work with might not be the one for you. So I think that's huge for me about the pain thing. And if anyone wants to learn more about pain stuff and physical health and how it relates to especially fear, we have a free webinar called Pain and Behavior, which you can find on the in the webinar library. It's really good. It goes into a lot more depth here. And I would totally agree. So mistake number one, and I guess one of the first things that we're doing when you see clients is, and you have the best possible eyes for this, but looking at the dog's behavior profile and what you know about their medical status from the vet team that they have, and figuring out, do we need to be making any big investigations or changes in this area, which is the health area. Absolutely agree. And then you also talking about reducing stress, and like managing their stress levels is the second thing. So like check that their physical body is good. People miss that. And then making sure that we're not overexposing our dogs to things that they're scared of. One of the biggest things I see, I don't know if you would agree, like when it comes to overexposing things to things that their dogs are scared of, a mistake I made is not only did I overexpose Hero to things he was scared of, I then tried to use food and treats and training to like help him cope with that situation, or to put him close to something that he was scared of. So I would often use food to lure him closer to things, or I would put food on the floor and then while he was eating I'd try and brush him. And this was something we were talking about in Feisty Fido. So I think in terms of big mistakes when it comes to, like, you actually got it written here, poisoning food. Tell me a little bit about how that might work and what that might look like.
I think the classical thing is a lot of people, they have the good intentions. Everybody wants to do the best for their dogs. And people will see positive reinforcement training or desensitization and counter conditioning is what we call it. And they try it from watching videos, which is fantastic. Love the efforts. And I saw literally a dog doing this today, like the end of its lead barking lunch, and they were like, no, come here, have some food. And I was like, you're too close, and that food is not an issue for it right now. The other thing that we see people doing is they see a dog coming in and they wrap the lead around the hand and they get really stressed, and then they start feeding their dog, and the food then becomes a predictor for a dog coming. So assuming obviously they're scared of dogs, it's the most common one, so I find it easier to relate to. But then the food becomes a predictor for the dog. So they start eating and they're like, oh my God, it's coming. Like, it must be somewhere because mum's got like real scared real quickly and she's giving me food. So if we only use this food and they always see the dog after the food is going to become the predictor, and they eventually become too scared to eat, or the food becomes essentially poisoned for them. And this can be the same with any situation where we're trying to do too much too quickly. Like maybe we're using food as a distraction, like you said, for grooming. And then they're like, well, I don't want to eat that because then you're going to start brushing me. Or we even just hiding tablets in it for our super sensitive dogs can become then, all right, I'm not going to eat my dinner for a week because you put a tablet in that one. And I don't trust that you're not going to put food in it, not going to put drugs in it. So it's really easy, especially for our super sensitive dogs, really easy to poison food or poison other rewarders. The one massive mistake that I did that I didn't even think of as a mistake until it happened was I used to play fetch with Crash on the park. We used to use a ball, we used to do a training because he was like a trick dog. And we'd do the training. And when a dog came over, I'd put the ball away so we wouldn't have a fight, so we could go and play with the dog. And he used to love playing with dogs when he was young. And then I realised I had literally poisoned putting the ball away and dogs coming over, because every time a dog came over, his favorite thing in the world, a ball, went away. So eventually he started being like, showing these like aggressive
Yeah.
behaviors towards dogs, because he was like, don't come over because I want to carry on playing with my ball.
Wow.
So that's one thing that I did massively, that I didn't realize the effect of what I was doing until afterwards,
Mhm.
but that was huge,
I did the
huge.
exact same thing. So I have this actually video that I posted on Instagram right at the beginning of my Instagram days, and I still have it somewhere. I have to find it again because it's funny. Um, I was trying to do counter conditioning techniques with Hera, just like I'd been taught to do. And the funny thing about this as well is that like I was doing these techniques successfully with loads of other dogs,
Yeah.
but it was my dog.
Mm-hmm.
My dog I couldn't see because I was so, you can't see the forest through the trees, that's what they say, right? I couldn't see diddly squat because I was so close to this dog and I was so used to seeing him in certain ways that I literally have a video where I was trying to do Leslie McDivitt's look at that protocol, where he'd look at the dog and I was trying to name the dog as the trigger. So I'd say, hey, there's a dog over there, and in theory he's meant to look over at the dog and go, ha, yes, there's a dog over there, funny that, isn't it? And then get a cookie. What was actually happening, and what this video was, oh, it was so funny, he was just happy as Larry trotting through the park, do 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 do, and I say to him, hey, here, there's a dog over here, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
he gets tense. He gives this dog the like, I'll mess you up if you come over here. But he's still doing technically what I wanted him to
Yeah.
do. He looked at the dog, he looked at me, he got his reinforcer, he looked at the dog, he looked at me, but it was all wrong. And looking back, obviously what I was doing was working him right up to the limit of what he could tolerate. He was not having a good time. He was managing, he was handling it, just barely handling it. And that's not what counter conditioning is. I guess we could talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but maybe do we have any more mistakes that we want to go through, or do you want to talk about counter conditioning? I'm going to let you lead. Choose your own story.
I mean, I just did actually a talk for my uni classes about counter conditioning and the differences between desensitization and counter conditioning, because I think that they get lumped together so
Yeah.
often. And it was funny because I was talking to one of my friends who is one of the most knowledgeable people on dogs that I know, and we were talking about desensitization, and they were like, "Oh yeah, but if they're going to come and get food from it, I think it'll just sensitize them to it." And I was like, "That's not what I was meaning by it." So desensitization is the idea of very manageable, small exposure done at a way that a dog can deal with it, and the aim is to be neutral, maybe good, but the idea is neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily paired with something fun. It's not necessarily paired with something rewarding. It is just there and manageable. And the analogy that I use to do this is my crippling fear of spiders. I have a diagnosed phobia of spiders, which is horrendous. And when it was at its worst, I couldn't see a cartoon picture of a spider. I definitely couldn't touch one. Like, oh, God, no. Even though it's on a page, absolutely not. So what you do is you break down the steps from what you can think of as manageable at the time. So for me, at first, it was a very small drawing, literally a stick drawing of a spider just in a room. And I could just about deal with that. And that's all that happened for at first. And then we built that up to looking a little bit more realistic. And then it was just about touching it. And it's all about breaking up these steps for us that are manageable and short and small that we can start building on. And I didn't get a piece of chocolate every time I touched this spider. It wasn't about making me want to like this spider. It was about making it okay for it to be there. I couldn't even say the word spider. I used to have to say spitter. It was a whole thing.
That's cute.
However, counter conditioning, which we often think of as the same thing, is where we go to like Pavlov's dogs and the little Albert experiment, which is the classical conditioning where a stimulus has a specific response. So they see dog, they get food, obviously at a manageable distance, and the emotions underlying it are absolutely key. But the intention of counter conditioning is that we turn something from bad to a good feeling. So they have a good feeling every time they see a dog, which is different to desensitization, where they can just neutrally live around their trigger. So that's two of the options that people do use for behavioral therapy for fear and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other ones as well, obviously, that people do use.
And I think as well, the counter conditioning and desensitization can be used together. There is
Yeah.
overlaps, right? So like you can
Mm-hmm.
start at a distance and do slow
Yeah.
exposure whilst adding in good
Mm-hmm.
associations through counter conditioning. And we can use other things other than food as well for counter
Yeah.
conditioning. Anything that the dog wants can be used as a reinforcer. And when we see folks making the mistakes that we made, where we were trying to do counter conditioning, DIY counter conditioning that we were attempting, like for example, the guardian who has the dog barking at the end of the lead, and then they come back and get the cookie. That is not what this looks like. It doesn't look like that to build neutrality, and it doesn't look like that to build positivity either.
Exactly.
What we're looking for is honestly boring. Would you say it's
Mm-hmm.
boring? I think it is
Yeah.
quite boring, because our dogs have to be comfortable, they have to feel safe, they also have to be an appropriate level of like activation. They can't be too aroused, they can't be panting with dilated pupils and so excited by the thing you're giving. They have to be, it's Goldilocks, it's just
Yeah.
right. And I completely agree with you that whenever people come to me and say positive reinforcement training or science-based training didn't work for my dog, I'm like, show me, please,
Yeah.
because I'm so sure that we can find a kind of place that you're going wrong, and what you're actually not doing is not counter conditioning and desensitization. You're actually sensitizing your
Sensitizing.
dogs.
Yes.
And sometimes people come to me and they say like, positive reinforcement didn't work for my dog, it just made them much worse. And I'm like, no, you just incorrectly applied it and put them through a
Mm-hmm.
sensitization protocol that was incredibly effective. Now imagine
Yeah.
what would have happened if we did it the other way around. You would have got a different result. So I'm so glad that you brought that one up, about that like inappropriate application. And I was talking about it in class today and saying to my clients, like, there are 1,000 places we can trip up in a behavior
Mm-hmm.
plan because it's
Yeah.
complicated. And actually, let's talk about maybe a little bit about like holistic plans. I know that we've got the England games in 20 minutes, so we have 10 minutes so that everyone can pee and get snacks before the England game, football game. Anyone who doesn't watch football, do you want to do like a little chat about like how we work? We talked a lot about how we work with these cases in talking
Mm-hmm.
about the mistakes, but should we just zone in on that little final piece that we've talked about, mistakes that we can make and areas that we go wrong? If we have 10 minutes left, what are the last little things that we want to be giving folks who are coming? And if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the chat for
Yeah.
myself or Grace. We have 10 minutes left to chat with you guys, and we can talk a little bit about like, so we talked about counter conditioning and desensitization. We've talked about medication and like health areas. We've talked about, actually, we haven't talked about medication. We've just talked about
Yeah.
pain and health issues. And we talked about reducing stresses and exposure to stress. What else are we doing?
Yeah. I think you've hit on a good point with medication. Medication can be so key in helping our dogs, but also using it correctly. So there's so many different types, and I wish I had my little notes in front of me, but I can't remember. But there's so many different types of medications that we can use that help with fear and anxiety. One of them is obviously pain management. If we can have pain management, that affects our anxiety hugely. We have so much scientific evidence showing that pain and anxiety are interlinked. And not only does it one necessarily cause the other, but even if they're separate entities, they cause each other to wind up because it's a similar pathway that they share in the neurotransmitters and everything like that. So pain management is huge, but also so is anxiety management. So if we do have these chronic anxiety cases, especially the ones where we are struggling with exposure, so what they're seeing every day, and we're struggling to make sure that their cortisol levels are resetting and everything like that, something like an anxiety medications can be the way forward for your dog. Obviously, you do have to speak to your veterinary professionals. Please don't sue me.
Please,
You know,
please don't sue
yeah,
us.
please.
We hate being sued. It's the worst.
It's not ideal. But you can also use things like muscle relaxants. So you can look at like things like your diazepams and midazolam and things like that that can really help with our dogs in concurrent with other other medications. So it's not always necessarily like this is the med that you have for an anxious dog. You know, there's so many
Yes.
different variables, there's so many different variable doses, so many different variable intervals. It's kind of like a really nuanced type of thing. So,
I'm
um,
so glad you brought that up, because there's so many times that I see either two things happening. One is that the Guardians started a medication for anxiety management, and they've just been on it for like a year or two. And then I asked them, have you seen any progress or has it helped? And they're like, I don't know really. And I'm like, well, that's
where's
not how it really
that?
should.
Yeah.
And then they're often surprised when I say, well, this is one of many different medications that we
Mm-hmm.
can use. And often you're working with your veterinarian and trying one and that doesn't work. So you go off of that and try a different one. And that's not unusual. So I'm just so glad that you brought that up. And then I guess the second thing is that not only can they not be effective the first time that the first one you try, but sometimes they can also be an opposite effect. Like sometimes they can have an
Yeah.
unwanted effect. And lots
Mm-hmm.
of folks also come to me being like, so I heard that I should try and get my dog some stress management, but I tried and it made them worse, and so I got scared and I never tried again. And I want to I'm so glad that you just brought up this idea that there are many different types, and that it's actually normal for us to have to maybe try one, it doesn't work, and constantly check the data. Is it working? Is it
Mm-hmm.
effective? And all
Yeah.
the different variables that you talked about in terms of different medications and different dosages and etc. But
Yeah.
there's a
And one
huge,
thing, sorry,
sorry, continue. No, no,
as I
please
say, one
go on.
thing that you did mention then was almost like the onboarding period as well, where things seem to get worse before they get better. And especially with our fluoxetine, sertraline, or SSRIs, we tend to get a lot of onboarding problems because the way that the drugs work is that they reduce inhibition, which is what we see as a freeze response. So if our dogs are utilizing this freeze response when we don't realize, they suddenly then go to like, oh God, I need to use a different one because I can't use that one anymore. Obviously not consciously, subconsciously. And then they may go into a more repulsion base. So, you know, you're barking, lunging, biting. My Chihuahua was on anxiety meds, and oh my God, that first 8 weeks was hell.
It's
We
gnarly.
had a Yeah, it was so intense that I mean, me and my partner nearly broke up. We nearly got like sent him back. Like it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
But we had a clicker counter, so we agreed like we're going to give this a proper go.
Yeah.
So we clicker counted the amount of times that he barked every day,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that we found was like before fluoxetine, he was barking 200 to 300 times a day, which is a lot for a Chihuahua barking in your house. Can I just say it
That is
was
a lot.
emotionally trying for us
I
all.
say
It was a
that
lot.
at Hero's Worst, he was barking 50 to 60 times a day, and I thought that was extreme. So that's enormous. This is what I mean. You're a freaking rock star. Sorry, continue.
And then during his, I think it was week 3 of fluoxetine, he spiked to 500 to 600 times a day. And that was why, like, it was almost unmanageable to live with this dog. Like, he's a 3 kilo dog, but my God, it
Oh
was
my God.
so difficult.
Sorry, I'm not laughing.
But afterwards, we reduced it down massively. Like, when we hit that 8 weeks, we were seeing like double figures, and that was unheard of for him. You know, it was like 40, 50, which sounds a lot, but if you think that he does yap like 6 times in a go, or so, yeah, like it goes multiple times. It's not just one bark. Yoshi is perfect. Yoshi
Sorry,
is an
Grace.
angel.
Yeah,
No, he's not.
you've got folks in the chat telling you that you're not allowed to badmouth Yoshi in public, just so you know. Yeah, sorry, I agree. She's a
He has
liar.
fans.
She's a
He
liar.
has fans.
We like the slander. So you were seeing it got much worse as the fluoxetine was onboarded
Yeah.
at the beginning, and then things got better. And I cannot tell you how much that tracks with my experience and with all
Mm-hmm.
the clients that I've learned and I've worked with. And the worst case for me is when folks are not warned about this. They start meds and then it happens, and then they take the dogs off it really quickly. And I'm like, no, no,
Yeah,
no, 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 wait.
we
You need to
need
be
it.
prepared.
We need
No, you
it.
need to just wait. Similarly with Hero, you know, I was saying, I was talking about this earlier today. He would walk around Manhattan with me in the first few years
Mm-hmm.
of his life. And then I started him on fluoxetine because his behavior was just getting worse and worse and worse around his fear stuff. And he refused to walk outside.
Yeah.
He just refused to walk for a long time. And what actually happened was, you know, it got a lot worse, but also I was seeing a lot more. He was
Mm-hmm.
expressing himself a
Yeah.
lot more. And before he would have just powered through, but now he's like, nah, I'm not powering through. I feel weird. And it sometimes starting these meds and going through that process, it's a revealing time, you know. Often you need help going through that, and that's exactly what we're here for, right? Is so that we can
Exactly.
provide tools like, we're going to track triggers, we're going to see how if it's working, we're going to check the data, and stuff like that. And yeah, I wish more people knew about this the onboarding period and how normal it is
Right.
for things to get worse before they get better.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any questions? I think
We do
that's
have some
all.
good questions. So I've got one question here, which is about a client who thinks that they have poisoned the food with their dog, with the counter conditioning, like we were talking about. So she says, I might have sensitized my dog using counter conditioning with food. I've stopped working with food around dogs now and people, but I feel a bit lost about how to work and how to move forward. And she's saying that she's uh, not quite sure now how to use food to teach her dogs things. And she's saying that she's started fluoxetine, she's kind of taken a break from training. And how do I start from scratch again without making those mistakes? This is such a good question, because I've been there. At my
Yeah.
worst, I would hold food and Hero would leave the room.
Oh my God.
I would
Poor
give
guy.
him steak. I was the worst.
Yeah.
I know. I was like channeling my like pushy South Asian mother in the first few years of our life, and he's very sensitive. And I would literally put steak in his mouth and he would drop it and tuck his tail and just wait for everything to go away. So if you're there, I first of all just want to say, before we talk to Grace about what we do next, I just want to say, I've been there. I was a professional trainer when I was there. I was successful with hundreds of dogs and I was still there. It's really hard with some dogs and it feels like shit, but you haven't, it's not your fault. Like, I want to just first of all start that with people. So maybe my big recommendation, if you're starting from that point, is to give yourself a break, because it happens to all of us. But then I guess, Grace, with your clients who come in that place where their relationship is just a little bit fractured, what are
Yeah.
your usual first thoughts around that?
I mean, the one thing that I always like to make sure is that we don't have any food intolerances or allergies that are really exacerbating the situation. Because if we're giving dogs food that's giving them a tummy ache when they see the trigger, it can almost get worse and worse. So I'd want to make sure that that's not on the table at all. And I think the other thing is making sure that you've had a big enough break between it so you can really start getting your dog's connection with food better again. So how are they eating inside? I wouldn't be using food at all with triggers until they're really, really happy eating inside and away from triggers. And, you know, it is actually a positive experience for them, because otherwise you're just using punishment, essentially. She has allergies, yeah.
There you go.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
So often we're
um,
finding that dogs who have these sort of food intolerances or sensitivities, they're much more likely to have the poisoning of the food because it's already weak, right? So it's easier for that to
mhm,
kind of fracture and fall. So Gracie hit the nail on the head there. This is why
yeah,
dog trainers don't need to be in person. You don't need to see the dog.
exactly.
We need to know the patterns. And when you get really experienced, like phenomenal practitioners like Grace, she'll be able to tell you what's happening before before it even happens or before she even knows, which is, I think, very cool. So yeah, I completely agree with you there. Check for food allergies. Is there something else underpinning this that's
Hmm.
already adding sort of bad negative things into this food association place? And then decouple the food and eating behavior from all trigger work. So often we have to come up with alternate plans to manage triggers while we
Hmm.
can't use food. And then building the eating behavior,
Yeah.
building eating as a skill. Someone says Grace is amazing. Grace, we've got all your fans in the chat today. Yeah, she is the best. We're very lucky, honestly. I feel very, very smug over here, having her amazing resource for our team and for her amazing clients. All right. We did have one other question that was really good, but we're 10 minutes to the England game. And so maybe we have to table this for another live. So I'm going to say the question, but we're going to have to table it, but it's really good. We can make another plan for this one and do it another time. But it's, which one do we think is better, counter conditioning or desensitization? And I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that there
Okay.
because we don't have time, because we've got to go to the England. I'm not watching the football, but I'm hungry as fuck. So I'm going to go eat something and you're going to go relax. But maybe, folks, if you're interested in learning more, you can comment your questions for Grace. If you're watching the repeat, comment this below. Comment like in the comment below and let us know, and we can do more lives in the future. If you want to see more of Grace, let us know. We think she's fantastic. And you were a bit nervous, but you did so good. There's no reason to be nervous. You smashed it. You were a pro. You didn't even like, I'm always nervous too every time I'm nervous, but I think we smashed it. And I just want to double, quadruple, triple thank you for joining and giving us your time today, because we're really lucky to have you. If
Yeah,
anybody,
no, thank you. It's been awesome.
yeah,
It's
if
been really fun.
she is a rock star. If anybody is watching this and going, I would like to be able to text Grace videos of my dog training and questions, and be able to message Grace with, you know, when I'm nervous and don't know what to do with my dog on a day, or if you, that's literally Grace's job, as well as being an actual veterinarian. Grace works as a behavior consultant with CCA. So if you're interested and want help with your fearful dog, but also hyperactive dogs or dogs that struggle with big feelings, you can DM us. You can give us the keyword Grace if you're really interested in Grace, and just message Grace, and you'll get on our team's radar, and we can ask you a little bit about your dog and see if it's a good fit, etc. But yeah, thank you so much, Grace, and I'm definitely going to have you back,
Thank you.
Dr. Cook. And my favorite thing about this was that Dr. Amy Cook was here
Yeah,
and Dr. Grace Cook was here, and we
so
had the
cool.
cooks in the room. That is the coolest. All right, so thank you so much, everyone who's watching, and you all, yeah, thank you for your great questions. Have a nice, enjoy the game, Grace. I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. See ya.